Welcome to the January 14th, 2019 Kubernetes SIG Apps. And with that into chat, I'm going to go ahead and drop in a link to the agenda where you can follow along. We have a handful of things. I'll be chairing today. My name's Matt Farina. The other chairs should be here. I see Ken and Adnan are both here today to co-chair. We don't have any announcements today. Normally we'll go through announcements, demos, and then get into discussion topics. This week we don't have any announcements. We do have a demo though. Is someone on to give us the demo of Camus? Camus, I'm probably entirely mispronouncing that.
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Hello, welcome to SIG Apps. The floor is yours. You should be able to share the screen and present to us.
Hi, so first, thank you for having me. It's really excited. And you are pretty close. It is Camus. Where is the slideshow? Don't look at my slide. Come on, Mike, you can do it. Okay, I think I managed to do it. So hi, everyone. My name is Omer. And today I want to talk about Camus and just present it to the SIG. My plan is to go quickly over the slide, do a demo, and then open it to questions. If I have time, I'll talk about the security of Camus. So Camus is a secret encryption solution that we build at Soluto where I work. And we built it because none of the existing solution was good enough for us. It has native Kubernetes integration, and we also build something that will make it seamless for the pod. You're probably wondering what is Camus. So I guess there is no Hebrew speaker in the audience. Camus is a word in Hebrew, which means something that is secret or hidden. Pretty relevant to what is Camus, handling of keeping things hidden. Let's go quickly over the architecture of Camus, and then I do the demo. So Camus composed from two components. We have the encryptor API and the crypto API. The user is talking with the encryptor, send it and the sensitive data that she wants to encrypt, get back something that is encrypted, and this encrypted data she can put on GitHub or whatever. Some magic happened. This encrypted secret gets to the pod. Here runs an init container. The init container decrypts the encrypted data and create a config file. And this config file can be used by the application normally, like any other configuration files. Someone want to ask something before I go to the demo? Just to make it clear. Cool. So for the purpose of the demo, I built a small application in PHP, which is not working right now. Just a second, I will return it to work. Okay, so I have a Minikube running on my Mac. And now when I open this, we can see the example app in PHP. We can see that it's broken because the file with the secrets is missing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show what we need in order to add secret provided to this application. So let's look for a minute what I have on the cluster. I have 5 pods, Camus the crypto, Camus encryptor, and 1 pod for the example app. Now, what's interesting about Camus is that in Camus, we encrypt secret for a specific application. I identify an application by its service account. So if we look on the deployment Camus example, this is the deployment responsible to this pod, we can see that it has a service account mounted. Now, when I want to encrypt something for this application, so the example app could read it, I need to take the service account, and I need to now I can use Camus has a CLI, and I'm going to run it on the cluster using a kubectl run because the encryptor is running without an ingress in this deployment. I can provide it the data, for example, super secret, and then I need to tell it which service account need to be able to decrypt the data. So in this case, it's this service account, and it's running in the default namespace. So the last thing I need to provide is the URL of Camus. So I need to provide Camus URL. It's http:// Now this will start running. It's create a pod, so it takes a few seconds. And the CLI refuses to work because the URL is not HTTPS, but we can tell the CLI, I know what I'm doing, let me do my job. So this will allow me to use insecure URL. And now this will interact with Camus encryptor API, and now we got an encrypted secret. I can take this encrypted secret, and now to pass it to my application, which is here, I can put it in a config map. So for example, I can put here like, I don't know, client secret or something like that. This is the config map. And here I have the deployment that is responsible for the application I just showed. And we have the init container. Now, once I uncomment the init container and it will start running, it will start before the pod, decrypt the secret, and mount them. So let's see how it works. I now can do kubectl -f dot. Of course, I didn't save. Cool. Now we can run port forward again. And if we go to our pod, we can see what I defined in the config map. So I have 5 more minutes. So either questions or I'll talk about Camus secure design and other things I have to talk about it. Someone has questions or something they want to ask?
Does anyone have questions?
Cool.
Okay, well, I'll fire it off with questions here. So Kubernetes recently introduced the ability, I lost the URL there, to back secrets with a key management service. And so everything is stored encrypted using your key management service, whether it's AWS KMS or something like Azure, Vault. There's different key management services out there. Have you looked at the difference between using this for your encrypted details versus not? Because I noticed you've got an encrypted string here in a config map rather than a secret. So there may be some experience thing. I'm curious, why this versus something else like that, or Bitnami's sealed secrets, which was another project. Have you done any comparison?
Yeah, this is an excellent question. And I have a full presentation of 40 minutes of why Camus and not other solution. I think that what you refer to is the encryption of REST of etcd, correct?
No. The KMS is actually using a key management service to encrypt your data and to decrypt your data. And so it's not etcd encryption at rest, because I understand if you were to compromise etcd and get access to it, you could then still get the raw data out because that's a non-at-rest way to access it. I was actually talking about using a key management service in order to encrypt the data as it sits inside of etcd. Yeah,
so we're talking about the feature that making sure that when the secrets are etcd, they are encrypted with KMS, under AWS KMS or Azure Key Vault or whatever.
Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
So this solves only a small part of the problem. I see that I have 2 minutes, so I just go quickly.
You can go a little over that if you wanted to explain this. That's okay.
Okay. So I go quickly over the full slide. And
means the secret is compromised. Okay, so you're suggesting that the use case here is when you check the secret into version control, you want it to be encrypted in version control. Okay.
It's more than that. Camus solved the hard problem of how you can let all the developers create secrets and manage their applications with full responsibility. And what Camus gave us that other solutions don't is an easy way to encrypt the secrets and consume them. If we are going to talk about regular Kubernetes secrets, it has one big challenge, which is how you can consume the secret. Unless you want to consume the secret using an environment variable, which is this option.
No, I understand. So there, yeah. Okay. Are you still there? Can you all still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Did we lose audio? I think we may have lost audio on her demo. Okay. If he comes back, we can ask more questions. By the way, for the key management service provider thing, I just dropped a URL into what I was talking about. This does sound a little bit familiar to Bitnami's sealed secrets. I was actually going to follow up and ask more on that.
Hi, sorry, I'm so sorry. The internet at my home failed. I'm really sorry for that.
No, that's quite all right. I just dropped a link in. I was going to actually be curious then with the sealed secrets, because this sounds similar to Bitnami sealed secrets as well, but different. I understand the space. No, you're absolutely right. If you want to check things in, you have to have a way. Some folks have used things like SOPs or from Mozilla and Black Box from Stack Exchange in the space. This just looks to be a little bit more Kubernetes-centric way of doing it.
Yeah, so just a quick note about both sealed secrets and SOPs, the both solutions you mentioned. So there are two problems with both solutions. The first is that you still have the limitation of Kubernetes secrets. For example, usually the approach of using Kubernetes secrets, and I don't know if you saw this slide before the internet went down, is that usually the approach is to have one config file, base64 encoded, and then have one secret with just one key. Now, if you use sealed secret or ham secret, which is the wrapper around MOPS, you need to be able to encrypt and decrypt each time this data. Camus let you have one-way encryption, so you never need to decrypt the secrets in order to change them or modify them. And it's also a lot simpler because you saw the config map. You have one simple config map, so if now I want to have like token, I don't know if I need to have like...
You're not sharing your screen anymore if you wanted us to see something.
Yes, so what I was saying, and it's moved, I will go again to this slide. So usually when you're working with secrets, you have one config file, you do base64 encoding of this file, and then you put it in a secret manifest. Like you have one key with this base64 representation of the config file. This is a common approach to how to work with secret and sensitive data. This means that any change you need to do in this file, you need to decrypt the entire key and then modify the things. Camus work a bit differently. Camus works a bit differently. If I have multiple things, I can just have multiple keys like this. And then first, it's one-way encryption. There is no way as a user to decrypt this data ever. Both sealed secret and ham secret require you to be able to decrypt the data each time you change the secret. So here, you don't need never to decrypt it, and you can. This is the main difference from other solutions. Does that answer your question?
Oh, it very much does. Thank you. Okay. This was the kind of data. So I have one more question. You just showed a deck from a longer presentation. Is that available for those who want to follow after the fact?
So I'm going to present this deck. It's not completed yet. I'm going to present it next week at AppSec California. And right after the presentation next week, I will put it online. There is also a blog post in progress. And so yes, I will put these slides, the slide I showed here, which is just the part about Camus. And there is a lot more slides here about the secure design and all that. I didn't have time to mention that, but Camus also work with KMS backend. So currently we support Azure Key Vault and GCP KMS, and we want to support other backends in the future. So it's actually leverage the same benefits of Kubernetes KMS encryption.
Okay, no, this is great. The one thing I would ask is when you have the blog post and slides online, if you could share them with the SIG Apps mailing list, so some of us can, know when they're out, so we can go read them.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you.
I have a question. Why not use CRD instead of a config map for the representation of the secrets?
This is a great question. We actually have an issue to build a CRD that will create a secret from a config map or something else. We just didn't have time to write a CRD because we don't have that experience with Kubernetes. So we want to do it. We just didn't have time to do that.
Okay. So and then, well, with so the Kubernetes secret, the way it actually works is the secret is only distributed to nodes inside of the cluster that run a pod with a pod spec, template spec that references that secret, right? So it by default limits secret distribution to only nodes that reference it. If you're using a config map or a CRD in order to distribute the encrypted version of the secret, how do you limit distribution? How do you ensure that only nodes that run pods that reference the secret will have the secret distributed and decrypted?
So because of how commons work, and because I think we did pretty good encryption mechanism, I actually don't mind if the config map will be on all the nodes, because as long as you don't have the appropriate service account or the token of the service account, you can't decrypt this data. So it kind of answers your question from a different angle. It's not a perfect mechanism, I know, but it's something in the way. And does that answer it?
Yeah.
If not, I would be happy to discuss it more because I'm not that familiar with what you said.
What you're saying is you're okay with the config map being distributed across all nodes and you're using the service token as a credential in order to block access to the encrypted value of the secret. So you're saying that basically if the config map is shared, it's not considered to be a secret in and of itself. Yeah. And users have to be careful about the distribution of their service tokens to ensure that there is no agent on the host that could actually get a service token to decrypt the secret if they were able to get access to the config map.
Yes. Again, when you encrypt a secret, you encrypt it for a specific application. I have here a table, this one. So when you encrypt a secret, you encrypt it for a specific application, and the pod can decrypt this secret only if it was encrypted for this pod using the service account. So if I have only this config map and I don't have the relevant service account, I will not be able to decode it, of course, as long as the encryption is strong enough and RSA is not broken already or something like that.
All right, thank you. Did we have any other questions? Okay, if anyone has questions, please feel free to use the chat on the side or to reach out offline. Thank you for sharing your demo and digging into our questions.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we have the discussion topics. And the first one we have today is Claire, who is working on the release 1.14 planning, asked for some time to talk with us. Claire, are you on today?
Yep, I'm here. Hi,
Claire. The floor is yours.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Lawrence, and I'm the enhancements lead for the 1.14 release. And I wanted to hop on here to introduce myself. We also have Aaron on, who's the lead for the 1.14 release. And so, yeah, just wanted to introduce myself so y'all know who we are, and wanted to check in with SIG Apps on existing enhancement issues or any new enhancement issues that y'all were hoping to get tracked for the 1.14 release.
Well, the one thing that we've been talking a lot about is cron job to GA, but we don't have the KEP open for that yet, and I don't know if we haven't decided exactly on the stability of what we're going to do with the controller, but it probably won't be API affecting. That would be the one thing to definitively look at going forward. I think the other big things that are kind of going around are the sidecar proposal, but I don't think that's going to hit for 1.14.
Yeah, and I'm not sure because Yeah, Ken, I was going to say, isn't code freeze at the end of the month? And I'm not sure we'll be able to get the cron job work in place for code freeze. It probably is
Yeah,
more.
that's what I don't think it'll be for 114 anyway, but those are just the things that are on the horizon. And then everything else I think is pretty much break fix.
I have a max unavailable for stateful set enhancements out. Yeah, that's still in enhancement stage, so I'll love if people can comment on it. I don't know if that can make it to 114 or not.
It's an open cap tonight?
Sorry, repeat the question.
Oh, which enhancement was this, Mike? Which enhancement was that again? I didn't quite hear you.
Max unavailable for stateful set. I'll link the PR.
Okay,
I just
cool.
dropped the pull request in for the max unavailable. Yep. Okay. You got it too.
Oh, okay. This is the max unavailable for stateful set.
Okay.
It looks like we still, okay. So to be honest, we probably still need to review this one. We have not gone over this as a SIG and talked about it. Ken, can you take a look at this one in the next week?
Yeah.
Thanks. So this may or may not be something, but it doesn't sound like we're going to have much for 114. A number of our things are a little bit longer planning, but since feature freeze is at the end of the month, we'll make sure we have any KEPs in. And I know Aaron really wants KEPs in with lots of details on them. We will try to give him what he wants for anything we do in 114.
Cool. Yeah. And then just to reiterate, yes, we do want KEPs for everything, and enhancement freeze is the end of the month. It's slated right now for Jan 29th. Cool. I think that's all I have. Aaron, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
I want to hear what Phil has to say.
I just wanted, could you repeat like what we need to do special on the KEP to make sure that it's targeted at 114?
That's a really great question, and I wish I had a solid answer that's been perfectly worked out. But I think if you were at SIG Architecture on Thursday, you'll understand that it's kind of still a thing in progress. So the phrase that I have used every time I bring this up is I'd really love to see a test plan, and I'd really love to see an upgrade downgrade plan if the feature includes either of those things. And I'd love for these to be part of a checklist that defines the criteria for something landing as alpha, beta, or stable. So if those are in your KEP, and that KEP is linked to an issue in the enhancements repo, and that issue is part of the V114 milestone, then we assume you're trying to get this landed in the 114 release.
To even ask maybe for a little clarity here, at the end of the month, does the KEP needs to be merged as implementable or implemented?
Implementable would be my suggestion, because I feel like you have a whole additional 4 weeks of coding afterwards. This is more about like what I did during the 113 release cycle was bring all of the enhancements / KEPs to SIG architecture once before enhancement freeze and once before code freeze to get a sanity check on whether we as a community felt like, yeah, these look like they've had enough planning and forethought and are on track to land appropriately. Some of these things are difficult to know 4 weeks into the release life cycle, and SIGs want to say, well, we're just going to try our best and see how far we get before code freeze. I think that's totally fair. We just do want to see some due diligence done in the KEP, so we understand where you're planning to head, and that we then have something to evaluate against when we come up to code freeze. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
It does, yeah.
And one other question, follow-up question, Aaron. You said that the KEP should have like the criteria for alpha, beta, and that sort of thing. Like how solid should that be? Like, because probably a lot of that criteria will be discovered, you know, after it's released and as you get feedback. So do you just, is like just a general direction good enough?
That's a really great question. I think that's something I hope we can just sort of iterate on. As as a member of the release team, what we are looking for is a checklist as much as possible, so that like we can verify that the checkboxes have been checked off, not necessarily that we, the release team, are responsible for chasing down each of those requirements.
I see.
If it's going through SIG apps, for instance, what we'd like to see is like have a graduation criteria in the CAP, bring it to SIG apps, let people in the community comment on the graduation criteria. CAP is a living document, so we don't expect that the graduation criteria will necessarily remain the same throughout the life cycle of the feature or enhancement. But you should demonstrate that you've thought through the graduation criteria and that you have general consensus within the owning SIG that it's a legitimate graduation criteria prior to having the CAP be implemented.
Yeah, that sounds fair to me. I think, and this is part of the thing that's still trying to be worked out, right? Like I would like some SIG, I'm looking to SIG architecture or some entity beyond just the owning SIG for capacity of oversight to sanity check things. A situation that I feel like we're trying to adjust for here is in the 113 life cycle or the 113 release cycle when the Windows SIG tried to bring a feature to GA, and there were concerns raised about whether or not the feature was even at beta yet. And there were also concerns that SIG Windows felt like goalposts were being moved on them. So I agree with Ken that the CAPs are a living document. It's not like these things are set in stone. There definitely should be some room for iteration, but it's about getting consensus on what those graduation criteria are in a format that's just really simply and easily consumable as checkboxes being checked off for us, the release team.
I'm trying to capture this in the notes, so.
I appreciate that. And we're all collectively discovering the formality of this out loud as we're going through to all of the SIGs and talking about this. So I appreciate y'all's patience in this being kind of an iterative and potentially bumpy process as we figure this out. But that's just sort of where we're coming from, and part of Claire and myself coming to SIGs is to just give y'all a heads up.
Aaron, since other SIGs might have these same questions, has this already been captured in a document in somewhere, or would you like someone to volunteer to put this in a document?
I would love for you to volunteer to put this in a document if you're already writing it down, Phil. You and I can follow.
I'll put it in a document. And should that go into the enhancements repo then with the CAPS place? Next to the CAPS template, maybe?
I'm not sure. Just follow up with me.
I'll follow up offline.
Thanks.
Yeah, because the other place it could go would be in the SIG release repository as well, which talks about the release process, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or it could be the community repository, which has a document on how to land your stuff in the 114.
Okay, I won't bike shed on this unimportant detail. I'll follow up offline.
Thanks.
No, yeah, thank you for bringing all of this up, and I appreciate all of the detail being put out there, because the more we share and talk about this, the more we can all get into a little bit better shape on it.
Yeah, so just to clarify, what I think I heard is y'all are going to go through and review any enhancement issues that you have milestoned for 114 and circle back in a week. And so we can check back in with you next week to see where you are.
Yes, and at the
you
moment,
can, but I don't think. Go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, I think the same thing you were. We don't currently have anything slated for 114, but we will circle back to see if there's anything we weren't aware of that we'd want to get in, and we'll get it into an implementable state if there is, but as of right now, there isn't anything.
Sounds good.
Other than bug fix, break fix.
The only other thing I would say is also, I think we're planning to not meet next week because of the holiday. And if you want to circle back with us the following week, that will be fine. But I don't think we have anything for 114 anyway.
That's totally fine. My hope and desire is for us to have to do less of this human level one-on-one discussion, and we can do more of this asynchronously. So I think we'll find the right places to ping you as we go forward.
Sure thing.
All right. Thank you. Is there anything else on this topic we should cover?
To address the question about SIGBeard, I welcome any and all messages on Slack. SIGBeard is currently without a charter, and I know the steering committee is going around trying to make sure all SIGs have a charter, so who knows how much longer this SIG will exist.
What's the scope of SIGBeard? Is it all facial hair or just beard?
Matt, I'm handing it over to you.
All right, so moving on. Somebody dropped in an issue. It's in Kubernetes. It's issue 72,593. There's a link in the meeting minutes. I haven't actually looked through this in detail. It is about replica set controller continuously creating pods failing due to syscontrol forbidden. Somebody added this to our agenda, and it looks like it's a bug, and they wanted SIG Apps to look at it.
So yeah, I think it was added in the last for the last meeting, but then due to lack of time, I think it got rolled over to this.
That's correct.
So yeah, so to give a rough idea, what it is about is like the pods that have sys in the pod security policy, in their pod security context, sysctl set. And if none of the nodes in the cluster have any whitelisted sysctl, the replica set keeps creating those pods, and kubelet keeps denying those pods. So so basically, there are a lot of pod objects that keep creating, and then a replica set isn't aware of it. So yeah, like I mentioned Jordan to that I would like to work on it. He mentioned that I can put it in SIG node and SIG scheduling as well. So the fix that I have come up with is like changing the admission of kubelet for sysctl from being like what is it called from being like admit handler to being a soft admit handler, so that the pod is put into like pending state. So any leads on this or pointers on this would be appreciated. If Mayank is here, he can add more.
So I kind of don't think it falls for SIG apps really, because I think it's more a SIG scheduling bug, as I replied on that issue.
I was going to say this is a SIG node bug more than anything else.
I think it's not SIG scheduling, but yeah, we can talk about it. because
sure.
My idea is like any pod shouldn't be placed to a kubelet if it will fail it on admission. Scheduler should be the one who knows what the nodes are, what the configuration for the node is, and if it can place the pod there. And it should never place the pod there if it will be failed immediately on admission. So I think scheduler should take care about it, because that's the way as we ended up doing with them in sets actually. Like we implemented a backup, but for the other part, it was actually the switch to the scheduler that moved from failing the pods by kubelet by actually letting them stay in pending without being assigned a node, because there was no node matching the criteria for the pod. So I think this is a similar case.
So you're saying we should expose this as control setting as basically what could be whitelisted on the node as a primitive to the scheduler, so that the default scheduler can interpret placement?
Yeah, something like that. I think in general, any admission that kubelet does should be also evaluated by the scheduler before placing the pod on that node. Because that was one of the reasons why we will have one scheduler and it will know about the nodes, and we won't schedule by them on set, and scheduler will do the job.
So that to me, that sounds reasonable, but it basically it's going to push another conformance criteria onto the default scheduler and any other scheduler implementation, which, as far as I know, there are maybe two of outside of the default scheduler anyway, and they're special case schedulers. And I'm fine with that if SIG scheduling and probably SIG node as well agree on that. I don't think it's a workloads API issue, and I don't think it's limited to replica set. What I wouldn't want to do is try to implement that sensitivity in every workload controller, and also propagate that concern to anyone who wants to implement a custom controller on top of a CRD that generates pods as well, right? Like, I don't want every single person who writes a control loop that orchestrates a workload to have to reason about syscontrol settings on that node when it attempts to do placement. So it's not something that we would fix in replica set, daemon set, stateful set, and any other controller that uses a CRD to turn up a cluster of pods. Like Thomas said, I agree that you could fix it in scheduler, and you'd have to coordinate Kubernetes. So you'd have to have people from Node and scheduling agree that Thomas's suggestion is a path forward. It sounds reasonable to me. There might be some security considerations about that, though. Like it might not be okay to have the node broadcast globally but it would only be the interaction between the node and the scheduler. But for the node to say that you can override these sysctl settings might be security sensitive. But we can engage node and scheduling with that proposed path forward and see where we land.
Yeah, I agree. This should certainly be done on the pod level. So as you say, all of the controllers don't have to solve it separately. I know about this stuff. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. The next topic we have on here is planning for deprecated APIs being turned off. If you go back to our notes from November 5th, Jordan Leggett came in and talked about having a path towards turning off accepting the apps workload things that are stable for their beta group. So we've got things like apps v1 beta 1, apps v1 beta 2, and no longer accepting those. He had a proposed timeline in there, and that was back in November. Now is a point where we probably need to do things such as a cap and start working through the details of making this happen. Along with that,
Jordan removed those REST endpoints already in the source tree.
He already removed them in the source tree for 114.
Was it 113 maybe? 113 or 114. If you go in there, so the storage format is still there, but the API, they're out of the API server, out of the API machinery. So it's not going to break your cluster, but with newer releases, you won't be able to access those API groups.
Which APIs did that start in? Because there was no cap around this, as far as we could tell, and we didn't realize that he had stopped the admission. I remember seeing the pull request, which I didn't review, because I see that he was talking about pre-announcing in 113 and 114 and proposing to not serve in 115. But if we can no longer accept things, that means it was brought ahead from 115 from his original discussion here?
I believe that's the case. I'll have to go and look through it. And then the other thing we're looking at is doing the storage evolution. Chow from API Machinery is working on some automated update stuff so that we can actually just evolve the V1 APIs into the the V1 Beta 1 APIs into V1 APIs and remove the storage format as well. But I can go take a look at GitHub right now.
All right.
Are you talking about automated change for that?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk on it, and we do have that notional script in Hack that should be able to actually do the upgrade for you. It's not.
You know that's tricky, right? Because there is like the special cases where we change the defaulting, like for the background deletion. I think we changed.
For sure, I know it's non-trivial. Chow is the one who's been taking a look at it. I should sync up with him in series add on that. I don't think the auto upgrade, the generic auto upgrade is functional as it stands right now anyway. But we did have discussion on many of the special cases and how to handle the defaulting, what will break if users turn this on, what promises can actually be made about it. But he's not just looking at the workloads APIs, he's looking at how we do this for API groups in general.
Sure, I'm just advising to be cautious about it because there are like logical things that can likely not be automated.
Yeah, so it's more than just cautious, it's actually scoping it down to what it can do, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
It's clearly advertising what we promised for this use case.
Yeah, sure, then it's fine.
Yeah, and we need to start communicating this more broadly too, and know when it's coming, because there are, if you start going and like scouring just applications people have on GitHub and files on GitHub, you actually still find things using deployments from the old enhancements space, even before the apps existed. And so we probably need to make it very clear that this is coming, so people are aware ahead of time that this is going to break them. Even though beta, this is long past our beta API policy, we've gone on far longer than our API policy has allowed for, and people haven't updated. And so it's not like this is out of policy or not communicated. It's just kind of the state of the world. Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure. I can take the action and go follow up with Jordan and find out where things are at.
I mean, I'm just trying to figure out the exact time that it was moved and therefore what, which commit goes in. I think it definitely hit 113 and 114 though. Like if you look in the registry.
Did it?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the pull request 7370 that Jordan shared?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah, it touched 126 files and I didn't get a full review of that, and I don't remember if it actually removed them. Okay.
It did. They're gone. They're like in the registry. So like apps v1 beta 1 from an API standpoint, I think it still exists, but the registry is still using the storage format, or the registry version is still going straight to v1. And I think they're off in the API server by default, but you can maybe enable them not by default.
So if you try to push something that's in the beta API group, you'll get rejected in 113?
I believe so. Well, let me verify with the API machinery guys exactly what they did.
Okay, yeah, let's find out, because if so, we really want to start broadcasting this, because eventually everybody's going to start except having 113 clusters, and it's going to start burning people. So we should give people a heads up ahead of time.
Yeah, we should. I mean, given the API machinery and Jordan as an API owner has kind of taken the lead on it, like we can do what we can to evangelize, but it is, I feel like they've asserted ownership over this. So
yeah, I'm more interested in just communicating to the ecosystem, because the ecosystem is still using way too many beta APIs, and they need to be aware that this is coming, because they don't read the release notes for the most part.
For sure.
So that's all I'm thinking of. Okay, no, that's great. Then the last thing we had on here, let me scroll back to today, was so we got an email to the mailing list so we've been having this iteration going between 1 week is workloads and another week is developer discussions, and we sort of had that distinction. And the reality is the developer discussions kind of died off. It turns out we were not having the structure of developer conversations that folks wanted to have. And so we've been talking about lots of other things, and they've become kind of a mishmash, including on workloads weeks, having demos that are more developer focused. And so it was brought to the mailing list. Let me see if I can find it. About that distinction and how we can handle that. Let me go find I'll drop the link in. Come on, load. So I'll drop it into chat and then add it to the notes. There's the conversation in chat. And it talks about that at the end of the year, we reached a compromise to separate workloads and developer tooling discussions to bi-weekly. And this is about if we need to put a demo into a workload meeting because of unused time or press time, and another meeting, to just how does that go with the workloads discussions? So that those who are interested in demos can drop the call at some point, and how are we going to do that? And just to be clear on how we're agenda setting.
So I think maybe one thing we could do is just move back to, if we like, we can do bi-weekly workloads up front, and if we don't have any issues, give that time back and do it pre demo, so that people who are in off times for this meeting can use their time as best as possible. That's fine. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. Does that sound reasonable, or?
Yeah. It's basically what I asked in that email, like just
Right.
do the discussions first, and if we have spare time, which we can afford to give to demo or something else, like let's do it at the end, because for me it's like 7 p.m. and
Right, I get you. I mean,
I'm
for
actually not
people in the
interested
EU
in
time
like
zones,
demos at all, which is fine.
for people in,
We are a diverse group, which is perfectly fine. I'm just asking for the separation.
I think the one thing I've gotten from feedback is that, you know, people who are in off time zones who are contributing primarily to the workloads API as part of a function of their job, but aren't super interested in attending the demos, need to be able to attend the meeting in order to collaborate. And I haven't heard anyone strongly object to saying, okay, we'll block off some time every 2 weeks early in the meeting so they can come discuss what needs discussing and move on from there. We can explore that going forward.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and when we start planning the next meeting, since some of that is not planned, we will make sure to have that conversation up front when we curate the agendas.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for bringing up that concern. We're happy to try and make things smoother. And with that, that's all we had for the planned discussion this week. We've got about 10 minutes left, which means we can move into a time of open discussion if somebody had something they wanted to talk about this week.
One thing, I just reached out to Jordan. It is not, in fact, disabled yet.
Okay.
There's still a whip. It did not merge, but I thought it did. There's, again, I'll link it into the chat for his whip.
Okay. All right. Then what we probably need to do is craft a cap in order to broadcast that this is coming and to fair document it, because they want all changes like this in caps, I think. But I'll verify.
Okay. And then I had one last thing pertaining to last week's discussion about cron job. So we're trying to still get a cap out. I engaged, Janet has some thoughts about things that have been tried on job, and she wants to make sure that all of them are captured in the design. And then we have Barney, who's a SIG Apps member, who's internal to Google, who was taking a look at it as well. We'll probably get a design out. I hope to get one out this week, and then engage all the interested parties who are interested in contributing and moving that forward. Yeah, that was all. Just an update there.
Thanks for the update. Do we have anything else? We got 8 minutes. You can have it back, or any open discussion topics? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Thank you everyone for a nice conversation here in SIG Apps this week. And again, we will talk to you again in 2 weeks, next week, due to the US holiday where many of us will not be able to attend. We are canceling the holiday. So we'll be back again in 2 weeks. Thanks everyone, and see you online or then. Bye.